Hey, welcome back to the About the Labor podcast here at VikingsTerritory.com. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald, and today, well, we're sort of wallowing in our misery to a degree. But it's also time to move on to the next one. Next season starts today as far as we are concerned, and there's a primary topic that I believe we'll be talking about way too much, and that is the quarterback situation. So this is going to be a fairly light show, no sponsors or anything like that today. Just going to talk about the quarterback situation, what we know as of right now, and kind of what we foresee for this team moving forward, and some ideas as to what might make this team even better than they were this season, heading into this upcoming very critical 2018 season after seeing what the Vikings were able to accomplish for the 2017-2018 season, depending on however you want to say that. I don't care. And then we'll do some jokes and some more lighthearted stuff to try to get the mood up in Vikings Nation a little bit. So let's just start this thing off with the quarterbacks, right? So we got Case. We got Case Keenum, we got Teddy Bridgewater, we got Sam Bradford, we got Kyle Sloter, and then there are a bundle of free agents. A lot of very appetizing free agents at that. Some very, very talented players that will be or likely will be available on the open market depending on what they decide to do in their current situation. So there's a lot to discuss here. And really it's, I know that this is going to sound cliche, but it is exciting times in Minnesota right now. There is a lot to be proud of, and there is a lot to be hopeful about for the future. So, and that kind of starts with this quarterback position. We've seen Teddy Bridgewater do his thing. We know kind of his capacity for greatness. It's just a matter of, is this injury is that going to hold him back? And we don't know that yet. Mike Zimmer said yesterday that he would have liked to see Teddy Bridgewater more this season. And, that I think a lot of fans can kind of resonate with that fact. It would have been nice to see Teddy Bridgewater more this season. But Case Keenum was also lights out and earned that opportunity. So we know quite a great deal, I suppose, about each of these quarterbacks. And there's also, there's also a lot that we can kind of infer as well. So what do you think about this quarterback situation at this point, immediately following this incredible season for the Vikings?
Yeah, I mean, I think at any team, regardless of how talented the quarterback is, how accomplished the quarterback is, every contending team, every Super Bowl team has had kind of an established quarterback. Like, this is our guy. You could even go back to Peyton Manning in Denver. I mean, there was some flip-flop here and there, but, when Peyton Manning was healthy, he was the guy, regardless really of how well or how not well he was performing on the field. And I think it's going to be important to establish a guy as the number one guy moving into next year to kind of set that tone. And, I mean, Mike Zimmer never did that this season. I think kind of with some thought of going into next year having an open mind so that he can do that before the season. So, I mean, and he said, he thinks Sam Bradford's over his knee issues, and obviously we can never really
right.
The answer to that. And Teddy's got his injury problems as well, but I just think that one of the house guys at relatively cheaper rates than, say, your Kirk Cousins or Drew Brees. But I guess if you're going to go big money here, go after a big guy. One of the high price free agents. Yeah, go for.
Yeah. I think that to a degree, I think you're onto something here. But I also think that I do think it is difficult to kind of gauge injuries and that type of thing. You look at Sam Bradford's situation, and it's the type of situation where we kind of have an idea based off of what we saw when he was, out on the field in Chicago. But we can't know that type of thing. And same could be said about Teddy Bridgewater to a degree as well. It's the type of situation where we can all have our own opinion on it, and that's just how it is. Everyone's going to share their opinion, and especially with this quarterback situation, right? It's natural for for us to kind of all have an opinion on each of these guys because, to a degree, you know, we think we know a lot about these players, and that's not always the easiest thing to kind of come to terms with. But you know, you look at this situation, and it does look like, you know, the Vikings have a lot of talent here, and it looks like, you know, it looks like they're in a good situation. And with its cap room too, you know, I believe I saw yesterday that the Vikings have around $60 million in cap space, which is,
it's like top 5 in the league or something like that.
Right. And so you have to look at some of these players. You know, some of that money is going to go to these young players that developed, you know, very quickly this season. You know, Trey Waynes is probably a guy that earned himself a lot of money this year, despite, you know, a lot of people suggesting that, you know, he was a bust or that he's not, you know, he's not quite there yet. And to a degree, they're right. You know, it's he's a player that is getting better, certainly, but at the same time, we just, you know, the Vikings need to make a decision on that, and we'll see how that goes. But, you know, it is a tough situation, and that's probably the first and foremost thing that I think the fans need to remember here, is that there isn't a good way to go about this, quote, rebuilding process.
Right.
You know, we saw Jarek.
Well, I mean, I think rebuilding is kind of a weird term for it because I mean, the team's built. I would agree, or I would argue, you know, everywhere except for quarterback, you have a lot of good parts. Right. But I think Rick Spielman's in a tough spot because he really can't win here. You can't. You're not going to obviously please. You're not going to please a majority of your fan base with the move you make here. The way things have worked out the last couple of years, it's been divided between now 3 ways: Keenan, Bradford, Teddy. I feel like there's a fair share of fans for each kind of sector there. It's going to be difficult, and I think it's part of it is the philosophy that you want to go at this. If you want to say, okay, let's spend as little as possible at quarterback while still getting good performance, and then try and go balls to the wall at, you know, a big name quarterback and kind of focus your attention there, and for sure kind of guarantee that you're going to get, you know, a Cousins or a Breeze, a guy that's going to be, you know, an average to above average or elite. I guess if you're in Breeze, talking about Breeze, you can be for sure that you're going to get that type of play. Or it can be risky, go small money on, say, Teddy, and then kind of, you know, go after some big name free agents on other positions that may need help, say like right guard now with Berger retiring, etc.
Right. You know, you look at Drew Brees and you look at Kirk Cousins. Those are the 2 names that I have seen come up the most amongst Vikings fans. And, you know, I don't blame anyone for bringing up those 2 names.
Right.
You know, I've stated this a million times this year, but I'm going to say it again. I love Teddy Bridgewater. I love Case Keenum. You know, and I am very impressed with Sam Bradford, too, and sort of his mentality, despite all the criticism that he has gotten throughout his career. But there is a very real chance that none of these guys are the answer. That's just, you know, that's as close to fact as a subjective statement can be. That's how football works, you know. Again, everyone has their opinions, but some opinions are better than others. And, you know, Drew Brees and Kirk Cousins have shown a capacity for greatness, I believe. You look at what Cousins has been able to accomplish in Washington, and you look at what Brees has been able to accomplish both in San Diego and New Orleans. People forget about those, you know, his time in San Diego because of that shoulder injury. But he has came on in such a big way and put on for his city that it would be a blessing. Vikings fans should welcome him with open arms if he wants to come to Minnesota. Now, let's keep in mind here, he has been loyal to New Orleans.
That's a big if.
That's a very, very big if. He has been loyal to the city of New Orleans basically since, you know, he got there, and I don't blame him for that. You know, New Orleans has given him quite a bit, and you know, to a degree, I think the Saints get a bad rap because of what happened in the past. So, you know, it's an interesting situation, and you know, I guess let's kind of work through Brees versus Cousins real quick. From what we see on film,
I mean, to me, there's not much of a comparison at all. You have, for one guy, you have an elite. He's been a top 3 quarterback in the NFL every season since basically he arrived in New Orleans.
Right.
And then for Cousins, for me, I mean, I'm not as on the Cousins hype train as a lot of other people. He just, for whatever reason, I do need to do more homework on him, but for whatever reason, he hasn't jumped out, you know, to me like some of these other guys. So I kind of have him in the middle tier of starting quarterbacks. But he's obviously going to get his money this season. That's just the way the QB market works. But if I'm going to spend big money on a quarterback, I'm going to go for Drew Brees, absolutely. And I'm probably not going to touch Kirk Cousins just because locking yourself into what I believe he wants is a long-term deal. Sure. I feel like that's probably not the best idea. And with Drew Brees, he's not going to want a 3-4 year deal if he's 39 years old already. He's going to want probably a 1 to 2 year deal if he would leave New Orleans. And I think that would help the Vikings more than locking into a lesser quarterback for the same money for a longer period of time.
Yeah, that's kind of the main question here. What we need to figure out, right, from whether that's on film, whether that's looking at the cap numbers that are available on a number of different websites. I mean, you can look at SpotRec is one that I use a lot. Over the Cap is fantastic as well. Try to get a general idea of what the Vikings cap situation is and a general idea of what these players might be interested in getting, right? This is a team sport, not just on the field too. It's also a team sport in the front office, and these guys have to make a ton of very difficult decisions based on not only what they want, but also what these players want. And it's important to remember that as a fan, I think. That's something that when I was growing up, when I was trying to understand the game of football better, that was always very difficult for me personally. Trying to figure out, whether the players were more interested in the money or what the money says. And, and to a degree, it's also about, having ambition, right? And wanting to be great. We saw Jerick McKinnon come out yesterday or the day before. I believe it was Chris Thomason who was on the report, stating that McKinnon is, I suppose, open to returning to Minnesota, but his goal is to be a featured back somewhere.
Right.
And you can make a very strong argument that he has, in fact, earned that right. You can also make a very strong argument that he has not earned that right in Minnesota.
Yeah.
With Dalvin Cook returning.
I think that's if you read between the lines, to me it looks like McKinnon wants out just because Dalvin's returning, clearly the featured guy, and Jet has clearly said, okay, I want to be the featured guy. I mean, right there, kind of to me it says, all right, Jet wants out. But I mean, I think that's kind of to the point that you were making there.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily just the quarterback position, but the quarterback position does kind of influence what the Vikings do elsewhere, right? And that's why you got to be careful with Case Keenum, right? That's ultimately why I have been advocating that, I'm not certain if Case Keenum is the guy. I'm also not certain that Teddy Bridgewater is the guy, and I'm very skeptical of Sam Bradford despite my personal belief that he is the most naturally talented of the trio. And then Kyle Sloter is the ultimate what if, right? We understand what he was able to accomplish when he was in Denver. That was incredible.
But that was how many full games is that when you're playing preseason? Like a game and a half of full action. I mean,
and that's what makes Mike McCoy so interesting. So all of these things are connected, right? Like all of these pieces are very connected. So, if the Vikings bring in Mike McCoy, it might be, being that he has worked with Kyle Sloter, that could signal the end of someone. I don't know which quarterback is going to come back.
Maybe none of them do. Maybe none of them come back.
And that's ultimately what it comes down to, what these players want. And, I think that good fans have to want what the players want as well, while also having a rooting interest for their team. That's kind of my philosophy on how to approach football in the best way possible. Don't trample anyone, or at least don't try to trample anyone on your en route to where you're going. But at the same time, you got to be fair to just about everyone, and I think the Vikings organization does that. They try to tackle in a way that's not going to injure anyone, unlike so many organizations across the league. And they try to give guys the money that they have earned. Xavier Rhodes' contract might be the best example of this. He's a top cornerback in the league. Whether you believe he is the top cornerback or not, I don't care. Jalen Ramsey has made a very strong argument for this case as well. And the ultimate thing here is that none of us really can fully understand what these guys are feeling. So it's important to be honest about the situation, and that's why Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman do such a great job, because they put all these people, right? Not just players, people. They put them in a position to succeed. And it comes down to what they earn and what they earn on the field and what the results that they do get. And that's
while also serving the best interests of the team, right? I think that's what we've seen with these extensions is, a lot of them are team friendly, but the guys are also getting their money that they deserve. It's just that they're getting it front loaded or back loaded or however it works to where Vikings can still have room to give extensions to Anthony Barr now or Stephon Diggs now, etc. And that's kind of where the quarterback position comes into play here is, Case Keenum, his value as a quarterback in the NFL has shot up a ton this season. And he's now going to be eligible by, he's going to be offered by a lot of teams, a lot of money. Some of these contracts are going to be more than 1 year, maybe a multi-year deal, something around $15 to $20 million a year. I don't see personally Rick Spielman giving Case Keenum a multi-year deal on that type of annual value or annual money. Now, I could see him franchise tagging Keenum for 1 year, kind of giving him another prove-it year. But I just don't see Keenum getting like a 2-year, $38 million deal or something like that in Minnesota, or 3 years, it'd be $55 million, something like that. I feel like the best chance for Keenum is to stay in Minnesota on a franchise tag. Otherwise, I think Bradford's probably gone right now. And I think, and I think Teddy is probably going to not be, if he goes anywhere else, he'll be a backup. If he stays in Minnesota, he could be a starter depending on if Case and Bradford leave. I think, and like you said, these guys, Bradford's, despite the injury, despite everything else, he's still a valuable quarterback in this league. He's still a starting caliber quarterback, and as I would assume is seen that way throughout the league. Case Keenum's value has shot up tremendously thanks to the addition here, and obviously some injuries here and there have helped him out as well. But that opportunity is there because the Vikings picked him up for a 1-year deal last year. And then same with Teddy. If he does get that chance to start again, it's probably going to be in Minnesota. So, yeah, there's obviously, like you said, there's a lot of things that go into it, a lot of, the players' interests, where the family is located. Because we talked about Teddy a million times and how he's from Florida. That's kind of where he seems to, want to be. But, it's balancing the players' interests and the team interests. Is something because you have 3 guys who I think the fans and the team are all very tied to at quarterback here: Teddy, Case, and Bradford. And I think you have to choose one, or you definitely can't bring all 3 back. And I think that's where this becomes so fascinating and why I'm so interested in how this is going to end up.
Right. It is fascinating, and like I said, everything kind of plays off of each other, and that's really the number one point that I want to drive home here is that fans need to understand that everything plays off of each other, and the Vikings didn't get to the Super Bowl this year, and that really sucks. That's going to be a tough pill to swallow for a very long time, I think. But at the same time, you look at what they were able to accomplish and what they're able to accomplish moving forward with the right mentality, and if these guys continue to work hard and improve, you look at this wide receiver position too. I mean, this is a loaded position. Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, both of those guys are expected to be back. You look at Michael Floyd, who didn't do a whole lot this year on the field, but he has came out saying that he's a better person now than what he was, I suppose, in the past, and that's always great to hear. You look at Caleb Jones's promise. I liked him a lot during training camp when we were down there. Jarius Wright, Mr. First Down. There's a lot of talent, and then you start to wonder if Treadwell can develop as well. It seemed like he was getting open. There might be 6 very good receivers on this roster right now, and that's incredible. That's a testament to Mike Zimmer's ability to develop players. That's a testament to Rick Spielman being able to find good players in the draft, and overall, it's just it's a testament to the success this team was able to have this year. So, I think that it's a tough situation no matter how you look at it for the upper management. But at the same time, all these players have put themselves in a position where now maybe they can earn themselves a lot of money in Minnesota, or maybe if they want to, they can earn themselves a lot of money on the open market, and that's just something that I guess we're going to have to wait and see. So, any other thoughts about kind of just initial thoughts, heading into the offseason here?
Well, I'm okay, we can look at it from how we want things to unfold. And I would, like, personally, I'm against giving that much money to Kirk Cousins. But, we have to consider what the Vikings want to do. And I think right now, looking at it, I think Case Keenum getting tagged is probably the most likely scenario. But I also think it's very likely that Teddy just keeps the starting job because Case Keenum finds a long-term deal somewhere else. There are a lot of teams in this league that need a quarterback of Case Keenum's caliber. I mean, we've said, I've said over and over, and I think you've endorsed it, that this Case Keenum from this season is the one that he's been his entire career, and he's just finally now been in a position to succeed, and then been given a solid offensive line, a solid running game, and a wide receiving core that has two very good, starting receivers, like very good receivers. And if he gets a chance to do that somewhere else on a team with a good supporting cast, then Case Keenum can be that guy still, and he's going to earn that money. And that's when Teddy can come in. But I think tagging Keenum is the most likely scenario, which would mean Bradford and Teddy go elsewhere. I don't know if you feel the same way right now, but like we can kind of make our like initial predictions of how this is going to go work, and then in 3 months, we're going to have probably our answer.
Yeah. I think that in a short term, I tend to lean Case Keenum and Teddy Bridgewater being the answer.
Both of them, or just
both of them? And I don't know,
because I see if for me, if they tag Keenum, I think Teddy's gone because he said he wants to be a starter, and right. If Keenum's back, they're not going to tag Keenum and then have an open camp. I think he would be the starter going into camp.
But the Vikings have also set a precedent in the past. They don't necessarily love using the franchise tag. I believe they've only used it 3 times. Once
they used it on Jim Kleinsasser,
and they used it on Chad Greenway too. So since that came into effect, the Vikings have not been a team that love using the franchise tag, and
that's true.
We've seen teams get themselves into trouble using that franchise tag. Kirk Cousins is probably pissed. He's probably sick of it. So the franchise tag, to me, and this is a philosophy, right? This is something that I kind of believe based off the people that I have talked to, and the coaches that I have spoken with and stuff of that nature, that, I tend to believe that using the franchise tag is a privilege. If you force a guy to use that franchise tag, to kind of earn it with that franchise tag, and it's a guy that kind of has already earned it on the field to a degree. I think Kirk Cousins is a great example of this. I think Le'Veon Bell is probably a great example of this. At least they've threatened to tag him. We've looked at a lot of cornerbacks in the past. Josh Norman was pissed off in Carolina, and then he ends up going to Washington, which, again, I just mentioned this, a team that likes using the franchise tag. It seems to me that players hate the franchise tag. And so I think that good organizations don't use the franchise tag as often because they need to be smart. They need to be smart about what the players want and not just what they want. So
how beneficial is it really to have a guy in that, sure, he's very talented, very productive, but you're paying him, what's the rule on that? Like average of the top 5 at the position salary or something along those lines. I need to actually get the exact wording for that, but of how much is paid for the 1 year. And they don't want to be there. Like, these guys want, like, I'm looking at Le'Veon Bell in Pittsburgh, and it seems to me like he wants out of there. But the franchise tag could keep him there for as long as the Steelers want to use it on him, right?
And he would also be paid very, very well. That's, it's a win-loss thing with the franchise tag, right? It pisses off the player because players want stability. And who doesn't want stability? Knowing when your next paycheck is going to come.
I mean, who knows if a player gets an injury during a franchise tag year, a severe injury that could, put their career in jeopardy. That's a lot of money that they just lost instead of getting a long-term deal before that.
Right. And you look at Teddy Bridgewater, and he might be the best example of this. And this is why I like to preach that, despite his humble attitude, he's probably pissed. I mean, yeah. I mean, he got screwed quite a bit in the last couple of years. He's been screwed. Like, it sucks. And it's not necessarily that the Vikings are screwing him either. It's that he got hurt, and that just sucks. Like, there's not a whole. He
can't be pissed at anyone in particular because guys have really just done their jobs and done them really well ahead of him. But it's just the way things worked out for his own career, really, really bad. I mean, it's super unfortunate that he was first-round pick in 2014, showed a lot of promise. 2015 led the team to an NFC North title. Should have been a playoff win. Gets a devastating injury, and 2 years later, he's out of a job essentially, and he doesn't know when he'll get a next starting job. And he didn't do anything to deserve that. It's just what happened.
Yeah. So it's a tough situation for sure, and that's why I do think that guys like Kirk Cousins, depending on what the Vikings are willing to offer, that's important here. That's really important here, because Drew mentioned this earlier in the show, that Cousins, after being tagged, is probably looking for a long-term deal. This guy's a quarterback, and quarterbacks tend to be more marketable than other players because you see their face more often. I believe that they're required to speak to the media. The starting quarterback, at least, is required to speak to the media regularly, and then they can kind of, they can choose what they want to and what they don't want to, but they are required to speak to the media to a degree. We've seen guys like Marshawn Lynch, not handle that necessarily in the most positive way. It is funny though. That's important. So, but I do think that Kirk Cousins is a realistic possibility. But ultimately, I think this is going to come down to Case Keenum and Teddy Bridgewater and what they want to do. If the Vikings elect to go with Case Keenum, which I think is probably the safest answer right now, I don't necessarily, know if if that's the case.
Well,
no pun intended.
The funny thing about this, it's been a while since we did that, so I think it was we were due for one of those. The funny thing about this is that you said Case is probably the safest answer, and a lot of people are like, wait, Case Keenum is the franchise tag is the safest answer, but I mean, your other answer is Sam Bradford, who clearly the knee problems are an issue, almost zero mobility there. And, an offensive line that's going to be losing Joe Berger. And, we had Mike Remmers at guard to end the year when Rashad Hill didn't look exactly perfect at right tackle. So you kind of need some mobility there. And then you have Teddy Bridgewater, who hasn't played competitive football in 2 years. And when he did, when those 2 snaps, if you want to count those or not as something that's, meaningful to the argument, did look great, So I think there's a lot of risk involved with each guy they bring in, and whether it be the money with Kirk Cousins, whether it be Drew Brees and his age, whether it be Teddy Bridgewater, involved that, I think Case Keenum is actually, like you said, the safest option at franchise tag, because the most recent sample, I guess, of Case Keenum with this team is an NFC Championship berth, which is pretty good. I mean, that's pretty good. And I would definitely take that again next year. And if the cards fall the right way, who knows if the Vikings are in the Super Bowl with Case Keenum. I mean, I think that's the safest play. So I think that is right now why I lean the Vikings to do that with the quarterback position. But again, there's a lot of unknowns with Teddy that also could turn out very well. And the same thing with Bradford that I think the front office is obviously considering as well.
Yeah, and I agree with pretty much all of that. It's not always fun to hear, objective truths, I suppose, about these players and these organizations and stuff like that. But at the same time, it is realistic here that the Vikings are looking at a completely different quarterback situation next year. That's a realistic scenario, and I think to a degree we just need to accept that, and that's why it's important to kind of look at each of these guys and try to figure out what they offer, because, again, we don't necessarily know much about all of these guys. Case Keenum's sample size is 1 season, and it was a prolific season. It was a very incredible season, and, we talked about this early, I guess, towards the later half of the year, once he started ramping it up a bunch, that maybe this is just who Case Keenum is. Maybe that's who he is, and maybe he's not a product of the system.
And also if you look at, the other side of this too, is maybe that's who Case Keenum is outside of his touchdown throw at the end of the Saints game. Wasn't that impressive in the playoffs, So there's
and maybe
so
that's
many
a learning
different ways
experience.
to look at it. Yeah.
Maybe for Case Keenum, he just needed to kind of get his first postseason experience out of the way. We've seen that happen with younger players, or I guess inexperienced players is probably the best way to put it. Inexperienced players tend to fold the first time around, right? It's not hard, or excuse me, it's not easy to handle the spotlight when you know it's shining on you. And for the Vikings, they learned that in the biggest way possible, and they were able to come through in a big way against the Saints. That's fact. I don't care what anyone says. That miracle, it happened. It happened. And the Saints have to deal with that just like the Vikings have to deal with this rather uninspiring performance against Philadelphia.
Uninspiring. That's a very nice, coding word to use for it. Okay. So, we have used a substantial amount of time, but obviously for our last show, we had a lot of questions about the quarterback position, and so I think we can answer pretty much all of them, or we have answered them already, but I think we can answer them all by going percentage-wise here. So, what do you think is the percent chance, say, that Case Keenum is tagged by the Vikings?
I'm going to say it's very low.
Very low, okay.
Very low, and my reasoning for that is the history for this team, right? I mentioned this before. You look at Jim Kleinsasser, how they handled that, and they were very good to Jim Kleinsasser in that regard. I think they treated him with possibly
the best tight end in franchise history.
See, I agree with that notion. I think that he's a very, very cool person and a very talented player, but relative to his on-field output, let's just be real here. A franchise tag is probably generous based on the fact that franchise tags is the top 5 players at their position, or at least that's how it's known now. So that was generous. And then Chad Greenway earned a lot within the organization and was paid very handsomely for what he did, being a career Viking, being a guy that came from Iowa and had to learn how to be a pro very quickly based off of his draft status. He earned that franchise tag as well, or at least he earned the money involved with that franchise tag. But then he was also able to accept his role as kind of a veteran backup towards the end of his career, which was great to see from a fan perspective, I suppose. But ultimately, I don't think the Vikings like using the franchise tag. That's my opinion on the matter. And
that's right. Yeah, that is okay. I actually was surprised by. It was just Kleinsasser and Greenway. I just looked it up. Kleinsasser in 2003, Chad Greenway in 2001. A couple of a North Dakota kid and a South Dakota kid got the franchise tag, and that's it. Never again, or never any other time have the Vikings used a franchise tag, that's weird.
Yeah. It is weird, right? It's and it's to a degree. Again, I think it sets a precedent for other teams. What the Vikings were able to accomplish by just being nice, Minnesota nice, if you will, is the slogan that people like to use.
Minnesota nice.
Seattle has done this in the past as well as an organization that I have said multiple times that I respect a ton, simply because of how they treat their players and how they treat their front office and stuff like that, and what they've been able to accomplish in a relatively short amount of time. Dude, this stuff matters, straight up. I know that statistics are important, and I know that, everyone loves to see their stats. We love to see our stats on the show, right? We talk about this regularly. We love the small victories. If you have a good show, or in the player's case, a good game, it's fun to celebrate that. But it's also important to stay grounded and to keep a positive attitude about the matter, because there are,
there are risks in the future.
Right.
If players suffer an injury like Teddy did, his whole future was almost destroyed, or at least his playing career in the NFL. There's definitely a lot to consider. I'm going to kind of break this down by percentage, because I think Case Keenum being franchise tag, I think it's 60%, and I say that because I think it's a very, very unique situation here that the Vikings have. Really, no other team has had something like this before, and I think Spielman's going to err on the safe side here, being that it is the most valuable player or position on the field, that he's going to go with the safest option. I think that's Keenum. But I think I would give Teddy probably a 25% chance of being the starter after that. And then you give Bradford 5 to 10%. And then you give the rest of the percent to Cousins or Breeze or some free agent coming in. And
where does Keenum fit in there for you?
I think he's for me personally, or what I think
for you personally.
See, if it was me personally, I think I would let Keenum go get a multi-year deal elsewhere or sign elsewhere, and then I would probably take the risk with Teddy.
Yeah.
And I don't love that because of all the risk there is involved. But I think it's tough because I think what the Vikings can do with him, if they do have Teddy as a starter, they have a lot of money to allocate elsewhere and to really be aggressive, getting big name free agents on at right guard or to replace like Terrence Newman in the secondary or something like that, and they can really bolster this team. And if Teddy does live up to his potential still, then I think it really pays off, and the payoff could be huge. Like it could be multiple Super Bowl runs. But if it doesn't work out, I think then the nice thing about it is the Vikings can start over and have a similar situation at quarterback where they still need one, and there are going to be options, and they're going to have the financial ability to do so.
So in the end, this ultimately comes down to Teddy Bridgewater and Case Keenum once again, right? Sam Bradford. No, we talked
most likely, yeah. I mean, there are other possibilities outside of. I think those two guys are definitely the front runners right now.
I would tend to agree with you on that, and then it becomes a matter of personal taste, right? Who do you like more, Teddy Bridgewater or Case Keenum? And both of those guys are...
It's tough to not like.
It really is. They're both humble and they're both competitors. And, it's tough to respect that for fans sometimes when the on-field performance doesn't show it. You look at Teddy Bridgewater's interception, and I remember just seeing everyone freaking out, right?
Yeah, I mean... Geez, it's 34-0. Oh, goodness, the backup quarterback who hasn't played in 2 years because of the catastrophic knee injury throws a tipped interception. Man, that's he's. God, we got to look at his character now. We got to look at did he really come back as well as he could? Did he really put in the time? Jeez.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so ridiculous. So, ultimately, I'm with you in the sense that it comes down to Bridgewater and Keenum. I like both players. I think both players have Super Bowl potential. But until I see it, as someone who grew up a Vikings fan, I'm going to be skeptical. That's just in my nature. And I'm sorry about that, but that's my nature. I have to be skeptical. I have to be. That's who I am, and that's who we
I would assume that 99% of our listeners can relate to that after going through everything that this franchise has gone through.
It's tough. It's it can be very challenging, and you hope that the Vikings can kind of get their stuff together, I suppose, and they're definitely in a good position to do so right now. But again, summer is important. There isn't really an off season in the NFL. It's important to take breaks and get your mind right. That's something that I've learned from millions of coaches. Pretty much every coach that I've ever talked to has told me, hey, it's important to get guys to buy in, and it's important to get guys on the same page. And once you do that, once you create that positive energy and that atmosphere in the locker room, that's when things really start to fall into place for you. And we saw that with the Vikings this year. We saw that with the Saints this year. We saw that with the Eagles this year. To a degree, we saw that with the Chiefs this year. A lot of these teams really turned a corner, like really, really turned a corner with their young talent and being able to, get players to buy into what's going on. And I think that the product on the field...
now the NFC is super, super scary, which makes this quarterback thing that much more important and interesting because, the NFC, the Eagles out of nowhere are elite now.
And they're going to be getting Carson Wentz back.
Right.
Hopefully.
The Rams are going to be better next year probably because they're so young and talented. The Saints, if they get Drew Brees back, are going to be elite once again. You have Seattle, who's still dangerous as always. Green Bay's going to get Aaron Rodgers back. Carolina just went 11-5.
And they have Cam Newton, who's a beast.
Atlanta is still dangerous. How many teams do you think in the NFC are better than every team in the AFC except for those top three? Jacksonville, Pittsburgh, New England. You could probably pick 9-10 teams in the NFC that would beat, let's see, whoever the 4 team was. Probably Kansas City.
City, San Diego has a lot of upside, I think, with their young talent and Phillip Rivers still there.
But even still, I'd take Seattle. I'd take
Los
Green
Angeles,
Bay.
I guess.
I'd take Atlanta. I'd take Carolina.
How about the Rams too? The Rams too. They're on the up and up.
Yeah.
Sean McVay is probably a good candidate to win Coach of the Year.
The Giants, I bet, are they're
oh my
very
God,
much set up. they're very much set up for a reboot once they get healthy.
Dude, that NFC East, just look
and
at
Dallas has some potential too. I mean, I don't like them, but they have talent.
It's hard. Yeah. It's hard to. It's funny because I can't remember who tweeted this yesterday, but it was hilarious. I laughed out loud by myself. The long list of teams that Vikings fans have kind of a grudge against. I mean, it starts with Atlanta and New Orleans, and we got past New Orleans this year, which was nice to see, right? And then there's Atlanta, which, they kind of got a taste.
Now there's Philly.
There's Philly. There's Dallas with the whole Herschel Walker trade. I mean, there are a lot of teams. I remember, was it the Chiefs that played the first Super Bowl in franchise history?
They played against the Vikings?
Yeah, they lost to the Chiefs.
I believe that's what it was.
So
Vikings have gotten clobbered in every Super Bowl too. Every one of those Super Bowl appearances, they just got drilled.
The Giants,
which is very Vikings.
This is ironic too. I just thought of this, just popped into my head. Pat Shurmur leaving, right? A lot of Vikings fans are pissed about this, and again, I don't blame you, but it's important. I'm going to reiterate this one more time. I'm going to try to stop doing this, but it really is important to just try to be thankful and grateful for what these guys brought to the organization. But the 41 donut against the Giants, was it in 2004? It makes it that much harder to kind of accept that Pat Shurmur is officially set to join the New York Giants. And then Jack Del Rio was the reported guy that he's going to bring with him, who got fired in Oakland this year. And that puts together a pair of incredible coaches that know offense and defense, and they're underneath a very good president in John Mara, who I really like because he came out and said, like, hey, this team sucked this year, and we need to fix it. But now they have the number 2 overall pick. There's a lot of hope. There's a lot of great resources there. I've always loved Janoris Jenkins. That's one of my favorite players in the NFL, period. And I'll be honest with you, when the Vikings were drafting in 2012 and they traded up to get Harrison Smith, I wanted Janoris Jenkins. That's who I wanted at the time because I looked at the cornerback position and I was like, God, here we go. Remember, this was before Xavier Rhodes was there. This is before Trey Waynes. This is before Mackenzie Alexander. It's before all those guys. But cornerback has always been a very important position to me because if you have one or two really good cornerbacks, I mean, we saw it this year. You can control leverage and you can control the scoreboard to a degree. But Harrison Smith has turned out all right, I think.
Yeah, no, he's not bad. He actually got Pro Football Focus's award. I think it's the Donald Stevenson Award or something like that for best player in the entire NFL for the season. Harrison Smith. So
shocker.
Not bad.
Not
bad.
Let's finish this up. Let's finish this show up now then with one final question because I have seen this getting thrown around a lot on Twitter, and this is something that I'd like to address real quick before the award is actually officially announced. I believe the votes are already in, but before the votes, before the award is announced for Harrison Smith, do you think that he has earned Defensive Player of the Year despite not being a Pro Bowl selection? I know we laugh about the Pro Bowl, but
he did get in now, by the way. He's a replacement now. So
it's a little late. But
Ian Linval and Kyle Rudolph, they're like the asterisk Pro Bowl selections.
It's nice to see them get in for sure. But getting back to my point here, from the press, I believe it's the Associated Press that ultimately decides the Defensive Player of the Year award. Has Harrison Smith earned that award? Everson Griffin potentially. I know he kind of fell off towards the end of the year, but probably
if you go about this by looking at the regular season only, I would probably give it to Harrison Smith.
Right.
But the last 2 weeks against the Saints, I think he was all right. I wasn't super impressed. I think he made couple of nice plays at the end on that last drive that kind of made things difficult for Breeze. But then against the Eagles, he was lost the entire game. So if you're looking at the entire season with playoffs, I probably would give it to Aaron Donald. But if you're looking at it just a regular season, which I believe is how the award is actually judged, then I would go Harrison Smith for the Defensive Player of the Year. Yeah,
I'm on the same page as you there. And, to a degree, that might be biased because of my nature, someone from Minnesota. But Harrison Smith has certainly, Pro Football Focus says it. The Vikings say it. The league is starting to take notice. And, I know that one game kind of changes the perception of what people think. But ultimately, Harrison Smith had one of the finest years that I have ever seen from a safety. And remember, this is coming from the guy that loves Sean Taylor and believes that Sean Taylor is the best safety of all time. And we remember what he was able to do in a short amount of time. And I believe what Harrison Smith accomplished this year was even greater than what Sean Taylor was able to accomplish during his career. So it's great to see. It really is. And you hope that he is rewarded for that. But at the same time, it's important to stay grounded regardless. And if he doesn't win the award this year, maybe he'll come back next year and earn
Maybe he'll have that chip on his shoulder for next year then.
And that might be the best possible thing. From what I understand about Harrison Smith, that will only motivate him more. So that is it for the About the Labor podcast today. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and again, we're very grateful for everything in terms of our our viewership, listening-ship, whatever.
Our listening audience.
Yeah, we're very grateful for you guys and the increase that we have seen during this Vikings run, and we're thankful to the Vikings as well for giving us the opportunity to share our opinions and have those opinions taken seriously. So you can find my work at zonecoverage.com. I'll have a column, mailbag type ordeal that'll be up on Thursday. Drew, you can find him at Vikings Territory. Make sure to check that out as well. They are still pumping out phenomenal stuff over there, and the Zone Coverage team, hey, they're kind of doing a nice job as well. So those are the two spots to find our work. The About the Labor podcast, you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio. CastBox is the one that we like to kind of push people towards because we do believe it's a good medium for that. And it's try to have some fun with this situation is what I would say. It sucks. It really sucks.
The quarterback chaos is going to be great. I'm looking forward to it because there's going to be some flaming hot takes thrown out and some very idiotic things said, and I'm going to enjoy all of it.
And I do think, it is fun, too, because the Vikings are finally kind of in the spotlight. I believe I mentioned this on the last show, and if I didn't, I want to reiterate it right now, that Minnesota might have just became an ideal destination for free agents. I don't know that yet because we have to see what happens in free agency.
That's
but
true.
This is a very attractive spot for free agents right now with the new stadium, with all the players playing well, with the team camaraderie, Mike Zimmer being a phenomenal head coach. It's important to see what happens with this whole Mike McCoy situation, I suppose, first. But this is it should be a lot of fun this offseason, and we're looking forward to it here, and we hope that you guys are as well. So that's it for today, and we will catch you guys later on this week.